You know, I really wanted to like this movie. But this unopened bag of Welch's fruit snacks really says something, doesn't it? The Lion King is a 2019 remake directed by Jon Favreau, and it more or less follows the same story that we're all know and love so well. Simba is this time voiced by Donald Glover, and he once again has to take down his evil Uncle Scar, who's this time voiced by Chiwetel Ejiofor, the same guy who starred in 12 Years a Slave and who'd starred as Doctor Strange's partner in that movie. And of course we have Nala, who's voiced by Beyonce, so it's pretty safe to say this cast is pretty stacked. I was very scared and had a lot of mixed feelings going into this movie because how do you remake a perfect movie? I rewatched the original Lion King 2 days ago as just to get ready for this one. It was the first time I saw the original as an adult. Meaning it was the first time I saw it through cinematic film critic eyes, and I gotta say, I was super impressed. The voice cast is phenomenal, the pacing is perfect, the visuals and the animation still hold up to this day. And it goes without saying that the music, every song in the movie completely slaps. This is, of course, talking about the original, so of course, it goes back to the question, how do you remake a perfect movie? And the answer is, you don't. You leave it alone. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like this movie because it feels like a soulless cash grab. I didn't see the heart of the Lion King poking through this movie. It felt like I was watching a 2-hour episode of Animal Planet where the animals weirdly started to sing occasionally. So let's talk about the few things I did like. First of all, the music, as usual, it's pretty good. They tweaked the lyrics in a couple of songs, but I still loved them as a whole. Whenever the music started up, I was like, okay, this somewhat resembles the Lion King I know. And there's even a couple of new songs added in there for good measure. These current day celebrity renditions of classic songs is always nice to see in a movie like this, especially when you have the voice talents of Donald Glover and Beyonce Knowles Carter. You best believe there are some good covers of Lion King songs in here. Also, some of the voice casts themselves. I really like what Donald Glover was able to do with the character of Simba. As Simba gets exiled and he starts to grow older, he starts to develop some very childish Gambino type qualities to him. It's kind of weird. He starts talking like Gambino, he starts singing like him, he starts doing his vocal lifts. It's really something to see. So lionish Gambino reunites with his former friend Nala, and then they have this really nice duet together like you see in the original, and Gambino and Beyonce doing a Lion King mix together? Yeah, sign me up. That part was great. Chiwetel Ejiofor also does a okay job as Scar. He's not as sinister or as callous as Jeremy Irons was, but for the material he's given, he does what he can with it. Also, this movie is more or less a shot-for-shot remake done in live action, or at least photorealistic lions live action. It's technically an animation because it's all CGI, but some of the shots they chose to iconically recreate from the movie, some of them, were done pretty well. And now for the negatives. Oh boy, where do we start? First of all, this movie's pacing is complete garbage. This movie is so much longer than it should have been. The original is about an hour and a half flat. This movie's borderline 2 hours. And the stuff they chose to add was like completely meaningless. I swear, they chose like 5 whole minutes of screen time to sweep over a single blade of grass. I took my little cousins to see this movie, and one of my little cousins, he just sat back in his chair. He's like, this movie is long. And I had to agree with them. If your movie is long, you had to keep the pace running so it doesn't feel too long, but that's something this movie doesn't really do well. A lot of the scenes they choose to add just don't benefit the story in the slightest. A quick example of this would be that in the movie Rafiki, obviously in order to guide Simba, he has to find out he's alive. In this movie, he finds out because a single piece of hair from Simba drifts in the wind for, I swear, what feels like 5 minutes, and then finally reaches him and he's like, Simba's alive, it's great. I was like, you could have got the message, the original got the message across so much simpler in like a quarter of the time. What are y'all doing? Not only is the pacing atrocious, the acting really isn't that impressive. Again, I like what Donald Glover does with Simba, but he's only in the later half of the movie, and I can say the same about Beyonce. I really like she sounds like a natural fit for Nala. We already know she has a godlike voice. But when you have the voice of an angel but barely carry any speaking lines, it's like, what are we even doing here? Who else is in this movie? Seth Rogen as Pumbaa, which I find pretty appropriate. Seth Rogen is kind of a pig, isn't he? And Timon wasn't nearly as funny as he is in the original. Keegan-Michael Key voices one of the hyenas, and he did get a chuckle out of me here and there, but it wasn't anything the original hyenas didn't do. But the most terrible example of this is young Simba. I don't even know who they got to voice young Simba, but this kid, he just didn't do a good job. A lot of the times in this movie, I'm listening to the dialogue and it sounds like the actors are reading right from their scripts. So when you have actors that sound like they're barely even trying, along with CGI photorealistic lions that can barely emote, you just feel like this is a shameless cash grab. So when they add unnecessary lines of dialogue in this movie, not only does it pad the runtime, but it just makes the whole thing feel less inspired. The writing overall is pretty sketchy. It's not like it's not like a line for line recreation of the original. There are a couple ways in which they tweak the dialogue, but upon rewatching the original, it has a pretty modern feeling script. Like, there aren't any phrases or lines that feel completely outdated. Even James Earl Jones kind of felt like he was phoning it in. I could tell they didn't just grab lines straight from the original and just copy paste them in there, although they basically did that with everything else. When you have James Earl Jones giving a half-hearted performance, you know something's wrong with your movie. During the more dramatic moments, and especially the action-packed sequences, there's a lot of cheesy slow-mo that looks like it was ripped straight out in the 90s. And yeah, overall, I just could not I was just too hung up on this movie's aesthetic. When you have photorealistic lions, they just can't emote like they can in animation. You see, this is Simba when he's feeling happy. This is Simba when he's feeling inspired. This is Simba when he's feeling scared. Can you tell a difference? Yeah, I can't either. This is easily the least fun I've had in a movie theater all year. I barely even chuckled. I barely smiled. It just wasn't a fun experience. If you sat me down with 2 Blu-rays in a couple months and you said, hey, look, you gotta watch a movie tonight. We got The Lion King remake and we got Captain Marvel. You best believe I'm choosing Captain Marvel every day of the week over this movie, because at least that movie has Sam Jackson. And at least it has some action. Overall, I was very disappointed with this movie. It felt completely devoid of any sort of life or heart to it. It didn't feel like the same vein as the original, but at the end of the day, I gotta acknowledge, this is the Lion King that a whole generation of kids are gonna grow up with. I had to take a step back and say, hey, maybe I'm just a grumpy old man. That's completely possible. But when the credits rolled and the music kicked in, the audience behind me started clapping, and I'm just like, what are y'all doing? So obviously, I probably missed something. They had a good time with it, and that's what's important. If you're a diehard Lion King fan, you're definitely going to find some enjoyment out of this. It has a star-studded cast giving celebrity renditions of classic songs. So yeah, there's some merit to it for sure. But if you're like me and you more so care about the quality of the movie, more so that it's the Lion King done over again and not as well, you're definitely not going to have that much of a good time with this movie. This is the worst live-action Disney remake by far. It's not as endearing as Beauty and the Beast. It's not as emotional or visually polished as The Jungle Book. And it's definitely not as fun as Aladdin. As the first movie to fail the snack test since, this piece of trash, I can definitely say I won't be revisiting this movie in the future. I'm gonna give The Lion King a very disappointing 2 out of 5 stars. So those are my thoughts on the recently released Lion King. If you still want me to do a Spider-Man Far From Home spoiler review, make sure you leave a comment. I still might consider doing it. It's just I got it out a week late since I was busy with work. However, I'm still interested with talking about that. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like below and subscribe even if you like more videos like this. I am Pac. Thanks so much for hearing my perspective, and I'm out for now.